Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest edition of the World Report. I'm Scott Crowfoot. On today's show, federal tax receipts are at an all-time high, yet we still run a $600 billion deficit. An ex-official claimed the Clinton allies scrubbed Benghazi documents in a secret session to provide cover for Hillary. The disunited kingdom, Scotland may break out of the EU and NATO. What man is almost solely responsible for dismantling the Soviet Union and putting America back on track? We'll tell you in our history segment that's coming up. Now to our top stories. Another beheading, another round of golf. Nero fiddled, Obama chips and putts. A huge anti-Israeli flag is draped over the southern border fence while authorities find Quarans and Pro-Palestinian propaganda. Meanwhile, the administration creates domestic counterterrorism programs that fail to mention Islam, Jihad, or Muslim. The World Report senior advisor and economics blogger for USA Today Online, Beschloss, joins us. Maury, you grew up in Nazi Germany. You've seen the Chamberlains, the Carters. Is this just naivety by this administration, or is it something more sinister?
No, it's an ideology that they are trying to impose on this country that's totally foreign to anything we've ever seen before. There's been no president or precedent that has indicated us going in the direction he wants to go. You and I have discussed the June 9th speech that he made from Cairo, Egypt, June 9th, 2009, where he said America should be ashamed of itself for trying to be one of the colonizers of the world, and under his administration, we are going to be a peaceful country that's going to bless and be peaceful to every other country. He showed his Chamberlain-esque personality right then and there. Peace at any price. And his idea was to shrink the Army, shrink the Navy, shrink the Air Force, not show strength for good and for America being the savior of the world, but to show that we're just as nice or not nice as anybody else. And so we're going to eventually just give up our military. We're not going to go into other countries. We're going to, the wars that we've been involved in, those are things of the past. The whole idea, nobody seemed to want to listen to him. That speech, I listened to it 3 different times, and he was Chamberlain all over again in spades.
You're not hearing this in the mainstream media. It's not being picked up. But there was a big pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli flag draped over the southern border on 9/12. There's Qurans being found and Palestinian propaganda at the border. There's no question that these people are working with Mexican cartels to get into the country. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time before something drastic happens. What do you think?
Well, of course, but you see, this is, I'm glad you brought that up and brought in the anti-Israel situation, which is the new anti-Semitism. You know, when you hear about the outburst of anti-Semitic rallies and even attacks on synagogues, burning in France, even in Germany, which I give Angela Merkel credit. She held a rally just a few days ago with thousands of people saying that this will never happen again in Germany, and anybody that puts on a show like was done without her knowledge at the time will be jailed interminably after that. So the point is, I make this point very clearly, which I will probably be criticized for. You know, there was a belief that the reason that there was any anti-Semitism after the war, after the Holocaust, after 40...
the creation of Israel.
Well, but even the creation of Israel, for a time, the so-called left applauded it because they thought this would be a socialist kind of Israel. When they turned out to be a capitalist, militarist country, they went the other way. And, you know, this makes the left uncomfortable. Whatever anti-Semitism there is in the world today is fused with anti-Israelism. And guess where it's at? It's on the left. I know of no right-winger that is anti-Semitic or anti-Israel. I'm very close, and I make a point of pride with the Christian evangelists, who are the most greatest supporters of Israel in this country today. So all this hocus pocus, this is neo-Nazism, nothing to do with neo-Nazism. This has to do with the professors of colleges in the left who teach hatred of Israel as part of their curriculum.
Now, what do you make of the administration? There are reports that James Foley, one of the reporters that was beheaded, His parents were trying to raise funds to possibly negotiate ransom with the terrorists, ISIS group. Our State Department and Department of Justice threatened his family for doing so, but yet we traded a traitor for 5 of the most hardened jihadists in the world. It's getting pretty hard to discount the fact that this administration is on the wrong side every time.
Not only that, though, I'm overawed by the fact that they have the temerity to do this. I mean, you just brought up an excellent point. 5 murdering scum who could be 4-star, 5-star generals in ISIS based on their background. First of all, we should have them shot on the spot without even a trial, in my opinion. But then taking a deserter who hated the United States and bringing him back, and then Obama appears with his parents on television telling them what a wonderful thing he did. On the other hand, when an American journalist was murdered, he chose to give a 3-minute, then he went out and played golf and had pictures taken of himself playing golf. He thinks he can get away with anything, and is getting away with anything.
And is getting away with it, yes. We're creating programs to counter domestic terrorism, is what they're calling it, the Department of Justice. Not one mention of Muslim, Islam, Jihad, Caliphate, zero. At what point does even people on the left start to wonder where we're coming from this administration?
You know what's interesting about that? I was very glad you brought that up. I remember people would say, oh, well, it isn't really the German people that are doing all these horrible things in gas chambers and tortures and so on. It's really the Nazis. Well, who did they think the Nazis were? 90% of the Germans, in a poll, people don't know this, in 1936, they had a poll that said either up or down, yes or no for the Fuhrer. And the people swamped to the polls and voted yes for Hitler. Because in 1936, that was the year they had the Olympics. The Volkswagen came out, and by the way, I have nothing against Volkswagen, but Hitler was the architect of Volkswagen, the real father of Volkswagen, and Volkswagen should admit to the fact that Hitler was the guy that made the Volkswagen possible.
Well, and if you want to go that far, you could even say that Henry Ford should be blamed for giving Hitler the assembly line that he could make the Volkswagen with.
Yeah, but no.
And he was as anti-Semitic as they get.
No, you missed my point. I'm saying is we have a tendency to misunderstand that you can't have it both ways. The German people are suffering a stigma that will never be erased from the soul of Germany, that they, as a German people, made this happen. And I'm telling you, the average German was a full-fledged Nazi for a reason. They had a bad economy, they got jobs, they had autobahns.
So are you going to say that the majority of Muslims agree with the ISIS
I would
caliphate?
say probably, yes, I would.
That's your opinion?
Yes, because I'll tell you why. Because, and again, maybe for the wrong reasons, but Islam feels that it has been robbed of its status ever since the Ottoman Empire took it over in the 14th or 13th century, and they were always treated as underdogs and as servants and serfs and whatever, and they like to see the white man, the colonials who did this to them, get their comeuppance. And they're not going to say it, but the point is they say that peaceful, George W. Bush showed his stupidity, in my estimation, when he called Islam a religion of peace.
So did David Cameron.
Well, that's the same thing. Anybody who's ever read the Quran, I've read it once, I didn't go over it again, it calls for getting rid of the infidels. And the reason that they are killing Christians, they don't have to kill Jews anymore because there ain't many left. The reason that they want to kill the Christians in the Middle East, in Iraq, when Saddam Hussein was alive, he protected the Christians. I don't know if people know that. There were 2.5 million Christians in Iraq. You know how many are left now? 200,000. And that was after the American troops went in there in 2003. When the American troops went into Iraq in 2003, that was a death knell of the Christians.
And it was the worst foreign policy move of the last 100 years.
Yes, but I want to make a point. I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize that. The protection that Saddam Hussein, You know, he himself was a murdering scum. He murdered whoever.
And the deflection that he played against the Iranians.
Oh, he was the only wall of defense against the outburst of the Iranians.
Now that's where you have to give the elder Bush Sr., some credit. He was smart enough to know, go get the oil fields back from Kuwait, go liberate
that's all he had
the Kuwaitis, bomb Saddam's troops, but get out.
That's exactly what he did. He also, he did one unfortunate thing. He recommended that the Shias should have an uprising. And he wanted Saddam Hussein out of there, but he didn't want to be the guy to do it. So the Shias had an uprising, and the Kurds had an uprising, and thousands of them were killed by Saddam Hussein. Yeah, exactly.
So but ISIS is condemned over 4 beheadings. Saudi Arabia just beheaded 8 people last month, and people yawn over it as if it's no big deal.
Well, you know, you bring up some very interesting points. You know, when Israel defended itself against Hamas, you know what they were going to do? They had 32 tunnels. They were going to send a bunch of murderers in there during the Jewish holidays at the end of September, and they were going to murder a lot of the people and then take kidnap a lot of prisoners so they could sell them back. But the point is, so when Israel used the same tactics against them that they used against Israel, everybody was crying crocodile tears. How the terrible Israelis! They're acting like a bunch of Nazis.
The poor Palestinians.
Yeah, and you know how I feel about that, and I guess this is a personal feeling on my part. I've always been a tough guy in my life. When I was in Nazi Germany, I was a member of the youth corps, and I wouldn't even say they accepted me. I was head of one of my little groups because I felt it was better to be a guy that played along than to be a victim.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left in this segment. If we do take out ISIS, do you feel like the Shias now take over in Iran and Iraq and make it even worse? Does that expand the Iranian influence?
No, I don't. I think what you've got now, to try to anticipate what's going to happen, I think that ISIS is the real heart and soul of the Islamic uprising now against the colonialists. That's the way I look at it.
And the West.
Yep, the West, the colonialists, whatever you want to call them.
You, me, the infidels.
That's right.
We need to step away for a brief moment. We'll return with our economy and energy segment, the global outlook, political insider, and the history moment. If you want to watch the show or catch any segments, it's very simple. Just log on to our website, theworldreport.org. And remember to like us, leave comments, and for the latest news updates, visit newsmax.com, or you can catch Newsmax on DirecTV channel 349 and Dish channel 223.